So sometimes I get super obsessed by books more than sometimes.
Right.
And it's like, especially if it's something like this, where there's this whole world that they're building.
Right.
I would be like, look, so the Fremen, one of the points that they make over and over again is you don't hear them. Like, you never know. They're always watching you. You never know when they're... I would literally like look around and try to find them. And of course, because I was younger when I read these and I was reading the book, and in your book, you picture them. In my brain, they always look like Jawas from Star Wars. They're not, but that's what they look like in my brain.
3, 2, 1, punch it.
Could you jump to light speed in that tin can? Go back in time in the DeLorean. Will it crash or take to the sky? Tell me, smart guy, does it fly?
Welcome to Does It Fly, the podcast that puts your favorite sci-fi properties, inventions, and conceits to the test. I'm your mad scientist, Hakeem Oluseyi.
And I'm your pop culture expert, Tamara Krinsky. Time to dive into today's topic and see, does it fly?
For all you jive turkeys joining us out there, and you cool cats, welcome to Does It Fly.
We are very happy to have you here today. I'm Tamara Krinsky, your pop culture expert, with the ever wonderful Dr. O.
Dr. O, that's right, Dr. O. And I'm here to just kind of make stuff up, sort of, based on what I know about technology and physics. I do my best, but you guys are big experts out there. You guys are huge fans. And today we're going for a fan fave.
Yes, we are going to be talking about a classic, or at least a modern version of a classic.
Yeah.
We are talking about Dune.
Dude, and my tribe of nerds, there's a few things when I joined the world of physics that they were really into. They were into The Hitchhiker's Guide. They were into that movie. Oh my goodness.
Blade
Is
Runner?
it Blade Runner? Yeah, I think it is Blade Runner.
Well,
it's
Blade Runner is like earlier in the, I was going to say it's earlier in the...
No, this is the director's cut came out.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And the third one, Hitchhiker's Guide, director's cut, and Dune.
Dune.
Yeah, the people swore by that. And so, in honor of Dune, I did a couple lines of spice right before we started recording. And
so we don't know what's going to come out of your mouth today.
Not nutmeg, not that spice.
Well, Dune has had many incarnations, all starting with Frank Herbert's novel in 1965. It's actually a set of novels. There have been a couple of different iterations of it, shall we say. There was the David Lynch movie in 1984, which has an interesting place in people's hearts. We'll just leave it at that. I don't want to disparage anyone.
All right.
Sci-Fi Channel actually also did a mini series. Today, we're going to be focusing on the recent 2021 Dune movie by Denis Villeneuve and Part 2, which came out earlier this year.
What's coming out in November of 2024?
That's the mini series. So, not mini series, limited series, I believe is what they're calling it now, which is that is Dune Prophecy. And that is actually a prequel where it's 6 episodes, and they're going basically like about 10,000 years before we ever see Paul Atreides. And it's essentially going to be more of an origin story of the Bene Gesserit sisterhood.
Ooh, okay. Cool stuff. Yeah. But on this episode, we're talking about something different. We're talking about a technology known as the stillsuit.
And this is where we urge you, if you are not familiar with Dune, if you have either not seen the recent movies, especially we are going to be talking about both 1 and 2, and so they are more recent. If you have not seen them, you don't want spoilers, be still yourself. Still the video. Go watch them. Come back and rejoin the conversation. We don't want to put any spoilers your way to ruin your viewing fun.
Yes. And stilling myself, if you're out there like me, and stilling yourself is actually impossible. I am the most fidgety, non-stop motion person. So I don't know if you read my amazing memoir, But
Plug, shameless plug, as you should be.
I put this story in there from when we were going to a rocket launch at White Sands Missile Range, and it was high pressure. And I was a low guy on the totem pole, and I was there to observe. I had already done my job, right, to get us there. I was there to observe. But as people are like dealing with the expensive equipment, I'm standing there, you know, shaking my hands, shaking my leg and all this. And so my PhD advisor, the late, great Dr. Arthur Bertram Cuthbert Walker II, is about to use a drill press. And I'm standing there with him, and I see some bubble wrap with these big bubbles. And so as he said, I go,
Oh, no. Hakeem, what did you do?
not only did he go off on me for that, but he went off on every. He's like, and why don't you stop moving? You're always shaking your leg, you're swinging your arms. Will you stop moving, for goodness sake? So when I saw Stillsuit, you know, I was thinking, you know, what's that thing when they put you in a padded room? The straight jacket.
The straight jacket.
Yeah. But that's not what this is.
No. I feel like that's probably a horror movie that we haven't gotten to yet, and hopefully never will. But no, these are very different. This is the stillsuit that the Fremen, the native people of Arrakis, have created, and so that they can survive in this desert planet where there is just very, very, very little water.
Very, very, very little water. In fact, you know, I don't know if I told you this, but I used to rap like 25 years ago. And one of my lines I thought was really clever was the phrase, dry as the sea of tranquility, which is on the moon.
Oh, nice.
Right? Because so when you talk about levels of dryness, you know, there are so many planets where there's no surface water, right? That is the world of Dune. You know, it passes, the surface flies. What doesn't fly is that Earth-like atmosphere, but I guess you're not going there if it's not an Earth-like atmosphere anyway. So maybe that self-selects all our alien movies are going to take place where there's an Earth-like atmosphere.
Yeah.
But this design is designed to keep you alive because when I think of humans, when I think of life, it just makes me think about the innovation called the bag. Now, I'm not talking about getting your money. I'm talking about the first thing that has to form when life forms, right, are these little spheres, membranes, spherical membranes that our life use, these double lipid layers to make cell walls. But then inside that bag that we call a cell is several other bags. And then those individual bags come together to make multicellular animals that have this thing called a skin, which is an outer bag. And so we're just a series of bags and bags and bags going all the way down to this little thing. So the stillsuit is just another bag.
See, now I feel like I'm listening to my daughter just trying to convince me to go shopping. Can't we just get one more bag? Just one more bag.
The stillsuit bag is an incredibly special bag because the way it keeps the human alive is by recycling the water that the human, I don't want to say excretes. That sounds too gross.
Well, there's a couple of different kinds of water that we give off that the stillsuit processes.
Well, yeah. So let's go through them and the body's water budget. So we lose water through our face, called exhaling. That's about 10% of our water loss. We lose water out our butts.
That would fall into the excretion category.
Yeah. Then there's urinating from your bladder, right? So that's about 40% of your water output. And then there is through the skin, sweating, which comes in two forms. There's just your regular I exist sweating. Then there's physical activity sweating, and they sum to about 40%, right? And so what I find most remarkable about the stillsuit is catching your exhaled moisture, doable. I do that sometimes when I clean my glasses. Right? Then there is, urinating and defecating. You can capture those pretty easily as well. But capturing your skin fluids, while at the same time remembering that you're in a desert that's hot, because there are cold deserts, right? The biggest desert on Earth is not the Sahara, it's the Antarctic. But this is a hot desert. You have to remain cool enough to live while it's doing all of this capturing. And so the question is can that still suit actually be engineered to exist? Of all the things that it does, and there are challenges, can those challenges be overcome? This episode of Does It Fly is presented by Razer Axon, a free application with incredible digital art to customize your desktop. Immerse in a rich collection of official high-resolution wallpapers from indie artists, popular game franchises, hit movies and TV shows, musicians, AI artists, and more. Feeling creative? Express your concepts via Axon Create to create your own wallpapers and generate matching chroma RGB effects with a few clicks. Visit Razer.com/Axon today to bring your desktop to life. So, this is one of those, because quite often you look at things, you're like, could that work? How could that work? And you think about the challenges, and then you look into it more deeply, and it turns out that there are a class of materials known as metamaterials. Okay. And they do
Mark
strange
Zuckerberg
things.
own them all?
Who's that?
Does Mark Zuckerberg own them all?
No. See, that Meta, he named himself after Meta. Meta wasn't named after him. Mark, he probably wears metamaterials. But, I've seen them. So back 12 years ago, I was a TED fellow, and there was a couple of TED fellows that themselves were engineers and worked on metamaterials. And there's all sorts. But the thing that's relevant here immediately is the fact that the still suit claims to be powered by human motion.
Your body's movements provide the power.
That already exists via metamaterials. Basically, the motion of your body somehow gets turned to electricity. I don't know exactly how they do that.
I almost actually bought a jacket like that. Because you know me, I'm always freezing. And so a friend of mine who also works in production, she sent me a jacket that she wears on set that has I don't know, I didn't actually look too much into it, but it's got like different coils and things, and it essentially heats up. But part of the way that it powers the coils that keep it warm are through your own movement, your mechanical energy.
Yeah. And then there's thermal gradients, like you're warm near your skin. So I've seen an outfit with like butterflies, and the heat from your body somehow make them flap. I don't remember the details of exactly how you're doing it, but there's a lot of, there are these like piezoelectric coolers, and there's different materials that have properties such that you can take advantage of the property to move heat from one location to another, or to, there are crystals, for example, that you can just apply pressure to them and they generate a voltage, right? So exactly what is happening here, I don't know, but I know it exists. Okay, I didn't look it up. Now, the second part of it, which is the very first thing you want to do for the skin, is capturing this liquid. Okay, so here's the problem: you sweat to cool.
Yes.
And so if you have something that's capturing that sweat and is not allowing it to evaporate, so basically, the way evaporative cooling works is the insight to it is like when you're boiling water to cook. Once you reach boiling temperature, the water is not going to get any hotter, so you can turn it down to low and the water continues to boil. Why is that? Because all the energy that's going in goes into breaking the bonds from the liquid state to the gaseous state. And that energy, if it's on the surface of your skin, that energy comes from your skin, so that evaporating water droplet will take heat away from you and you cool. But so if I have something that's going to be a membrane that's going to keep that water in, then that means the humidity is going to rise inside there. And so once the humidity gets to 100%, you have no more evaporation. So you have to have a way of allowing the water to evaporate while still capturing it later.
Right. Isn't that though why they describe the suit as being a multi-layered suit?
Exactly.
So, because you've got, like if you think about when I'm running, for example, I'll tend to wear stuff that, they call wicking material. So it wicks the sweat away so that, you get that cooling effect. So what they talk about with this suit is that it's got a couple of layers, what I assume is
that's right. Yeah, it's multi-layered.
Wicking layer, but then it moves it away from the skin. So you cool, but then it doesn't completely evaporate off. It still manages to capture that liquid through another layer.
That's right. Yeah, where it processes it more. So
Yeah.
one easy way to separate out the water. So if I want to keep a layer of air at my skin, but water is coming out, there are materials, which is sort of like what miners use. They call it a classifier, but it's basically something with holes, and you let objects smaller than the hole pass through, and objects larger than the hole don't pass through. So if you look at the composition of air, what do you have? You have mostly nitrogen gas, the N2 molecule. You have oxygen gas, the O2 molecule, and you also have water, H2O. Of those three, guess which molecule is the smallest?
I mean, I'm gonna guess the water because that seems it seems like it wouldn't be because it's more molecule, but that's why I'm guessing it.
It is. It's the water molecule.
Okay.
Yeah, because of you think it's 3 atoms versus 2.
Right.
The others are 2 atoms, right? But those 2 atoms are hydrogen atoms, which are 1 proton, 1 electron.
Mhm.
So it's easy to create a barrier that blocks the gases of N2O2, but allows gaseous water to pass through it. But the problem also is that sweat contains solids. So if this water is going to be recovered to put back inside the body, do you want those solids in there? So the main solid is going to be salt, okay? It's going to be dissolved salt. So there is a desalination process. But when you think about it, Gatorade is pretty much salt water. So why don't you just leave it in there? I mean,
I will say slight tangent. So when I was running marathons, which I don't really do anymore, I still do some long runs, but I can't run marathons anymore.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite moments was after you're done with the marathon and you came back to shower, you would get the salt shower. Because you're running for so long and you're sweating so much, you end up having so much salt on your body that when I would go to take that final shower when I was all done, it was just like salt water streaming down.
Wow. You became an ocean.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what we are, right? We're a bag of ocean that's walking around on land. Yeah. With the same salinity, I hear, as the ocean. I haven't confirmed that to be true. But I've been hearing that for decades.
How much ocean you go in? I have floated in the Dead Sea, so.
Oh, you have? Oh, I'm so envious. I have not. I floated in the Mediterranean.
I've done that too, which is pretty amazing.
While moving.
Different salinity, though. Different salinity.
Much different salinity, yeah. Anyway, when we get next to the desalination, that's something that occurs. But basically, the suit gathers the water, and I don't know what it does with the salt, and it stores it so now it can be used later for drinking. Yeah. Now, the question is, has anyone actually created a still suit in real life? I couldn't find any evidence of it. I found evidence of cosplay.
Sure.
But not an actual working, because, there are things that we have conceived of for science fiction that people have actually created. Invisibility cloaks, for example, actually do exist.
What relation would you say, or like how much of kind of what is functional in a still suit or supposed to be functional in a still suit would you say is realized in what astronauts are currently using?
Oh, that's
because
a
they
really good question.
have all kinds of recapturing technology, and
They
obviously
do.
The pee and the poop is recycled and water's reclaimed and all of that. So
yeah, but most of that is done on board the vessel, not in the
suit.
Not in the suit. There is one example of this one astronaut. There's a woman, and she had she wore a suit as she was driving from Texas to Florida to kick the ass of her astronaut boyfriend's new girlfriend.
I did hear about this.
Yeah, I think they call that technology a diaper, but it captured the liquids. I don't know if it was reused.
But it didn't recycle the water.
It didn't recycle it. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, that is something, and the thing about desalination is that it's not trivial. That's the thing I was going to get at, right? Yeah. So separating the oxygen from the gases into an O2 can be done. Desalination is not trivial, and it's difficult to do even when you have a plant that's there to do it. So how exactly the desalination is performed on such a without outside materials coming in, without a great cost of energy.
Yeah, I would say, don't you need a lot of power and force for desalinization? And I would assume, therefore, a lot of space.
Yeah, well, potentially, right?
Okay.
Initially, you certainly would, right? But
Yeah.
one thing about technology is that you can scale them down as they mature, right, over the centuries. All of it's to say is that there is still some gray area, right? The technologies in the still suit exist in some way. I see no evidence of anyone ever putting them together to create something like this. Astronaut suits, which do have to have, thermodynamic regulation. I don't know what they do about radiation shielding. Maybe there's, something that's minor there just to get a little bit of protection. But as far as reclaiming their liquids for while they're in the suit, I don't know anything about that.
So what's your definitive answer then on whether the still suit flies?
So as far as existing today, I don't see it working the way it works on the show today. Okay. Could something like that exist in the future? I don't know if it could ever work like they show in the show, if ever it could work, especially the desalination part. So imagine you take something that flies, like an airplane,
Mm-hmm.
you disable it, and then you attach large balloons to it.
Mm-hmm.
And you let it go. That's what that is. Is that flying?
So it sounds okay. So what I'm getting is that for you, it flies in pieces, but not as a whole.
There you go. Flies in pieces. Yeah, flies in pieces.
You got all the puzzle pieces separately, but putting that whole thing together into one harmonious whole, you don't see that flying.
Most pieces are in place. I can't say every piece is in place. And even then, right, there's a matter of durability and wearability and that is some serious engineering.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually something that the costume designers thought about a lot as they were putting this together. The costume designers, Bob Morgan, and I honestly don't know if it's Jacqueline or Jacqueline West. So I apologize. I was looking for interviews where she said her name out loud, but they just kept chironing her. So
I know her well. She prefers Jacqueline.
But that's something they thought a lot about during.
You don't believe me?
No, I don't. Come on, these are 2 Academy Award nominated costume designers. We got to give them their due.
I know, right? I'm sorry.
Respect.
Yeah. And look what my shirt says: respect your mother and your costume designer.
There you go. Because trust me, your costume designer can make life hell for you on set if they have a thing against you. But yeah, I mean, that was actually something that they thought about a lot because what looked good with each other, yes. But also when they were figuring out the still suits, because they knew that the actors were going to be in these suits actually shooting in the desert for long hours. And they were also going to be in a lot of fight scenes with them too. So they really wanted to make sure that, they felt right, they felt good, they could move in them. So that was a big piece. So when they talk, and so there was both like the real life functionality of like real people wearing these while they're shooting and doing fight scenes, but then also, the idea that these were suits that were functional within the story. Like they weren't just fashion, they weren't just ceremonial. These were actually, these suits had a function. And Frank Herbert, this is one of the things in his novels that he actually detailed out a lot. And he had like notes on how they worked. And so this was not being invented from scratch. So how did they take all of that, find a way for it to work in the movie? And Denis Villeneuve, who's French Canadian, the director, when he came to them and he was like, look, out of all the costumes, like this is the thing. And he actually had a sketch He had a concept sketch that he gave them sort of as inspiration. So they looked at all kinds of influences. Jacqueline West was looked at like Lawrence of Arabia as inspiration. She sort of said this was her homage to David Lean. They looked at all kinds of Bedouin culture and how they, clothed themselves and dressed themselves in the desert. They also looked at medieval knights, right? Because when you think about their armor, it's all in little pieces. Each piece is, articulated so that they could move and do their thing. So these suits are functional. But they also, the question is like, what role does the suit play in the story? And sometimes the things that we talk about are really plot oriented, like they kind of help drive the plot along, like a lightsaber, for example. Sometimes it's really more about they kind of take on a world building function, right? And in this case, I think that's really where the still suit shines. So a little bit of background, a little bit of reminder for folks who may not have seen Dune for a while. So the still suits were invented by the Fremen. The Fremen are the native people of Arrakis. They have been persecuted for years by whoever is essentially ruling on Arrakis and running the spice trade, which is essentially a spice. It gives you hallucinations for the Fremen. It's involved in some of their religious rites, but it's also the thing that allows space navigators to take care of interstellar travel. This is a world where there are actually no computers. That kind of technology doesn't exist. So the way that they're able to traverse space is through the spice. The spice is produced by these massive sandworms that go under the deserts of Arrakis. The Fremen have a relationship with the sandworms. So Arrakis, desert world, spice is produced. Whoever controls spice production is incredibly powerful and incredibly wealthy. For a very, very long time, it was controlled by the Harkonnens, who are sadistic and cruel and awful. And at the beginning of Dune, basically the inciting incident is that the Emperor has pulled the Harkonnens out of Arrakis and given the spice trade over to Atreides, the House Atreides.
The Emperor has spoken. House Atreides shall immediately take control of Arrakis.
So you've got the Duke, who is Paul's father. You've got Paul Atreides. And then you've got Paul's mother, Jessica, who is basically the Duke's partner. She's also a member of the Bene Gesserit, which is the sisterhood of all kinds of powers. Again, we'll learn more about that in the upcoming Prophecy series. So when they get to Arrakis, they want to be a different kind of ruler. The House Atreides wants to be, they want to work in partnership with the Fremen. They want to rule together. They want to do this together, as opposed to the Harkonnens, who have always, just kind of ruled with an iron fist and persecuted them. So, it's a big deal when you are sort of invited to be in communion with the Fremen. Atreides sent a scout ahead of time to sort of open conversations with them. And when they finally arrive, when the whole delegation arrives, we learn about the stillsuits. And we learn that these are produced by the Fremen. The Fremen are people of the desert. They harness desert power. And that's what the House of Atreides is finally going to embrace as well, because they come from a very rainy planet. They know water power. They know air power. Now they're going to learn about desert power and hopefully be partners with that. And then there's all sorts of political intrigue, which kind of blows that all to hell. But what the stillsuit does is it really kind of gives you a grounding in this world, in survival on this world, in what is needed to survive in this super arid climate.
Yeah.
Again, at the beginning, they introduced this idea that it gets up to temperatures of 140 degrees every day once the sun is fully up. And that if you do not have one of these suits and you are out in the desert, you will die. You will die.
Yeah.
So the suit and sort of, and there are other folks who have made their own still suits and kind of adapted the technology, but the Fremen still suits are still considered top of the line. And so it just kind of helps to build that world, and then obviously the look of it, it establishes this look, and you've got a mask, and you've got the nose plug that captures, what you're breathing out and captures that moisture. So you've kind of got all of that helps establish this world that we love.
Yeah, this world of danger and
Mhm.
intrigue.
The other thing that the stillsuit also does, again, in this world building piece, is it helps establish the sort of role and mythos of water in this world and how important it is. Because it's not just like, yes, we need it. If we don't drink it, we'll die. But it's also it's uh, part of the whole Fremen culture, how you share your water, how your water actually belongs to the entire tribe. It's not just yours. It's a very communal kind of thing. So even though that, is not the specifics of the stillsuit, it helps us understand as viewers what role that plays.
So tell me this then. I haven't read the book. I don't know if you have, but I'm
So
wondering if
I've read the first two. I read the first two books.
do they
They
go
were
in
given to
detail?
me by my friend Dan O'Keefe, who
Ah,
was like, "You're gonna love these," and I did. Like I was so sometimes I get super obsessed by
yeah,
books more than
right, right.
sometimes, and it's like, especially if it's something like this where there's this whole world that they're building.
Yeah, right.
I would be like, look, so the Fremen, one of the points that they make over and over again is you don't hear them, like you never know, they're always watching you, you never know when they're I would literally like look around and try to spot Fremen in
Is there a
places. And of
Fremen?
course, because like, I was younger when I read these and I was
Yeah.
reading the book, and in your book, you picture them. In my brain, they always look like Jawas from Star Wars. They're not,
The
but that's
Fremen?
what they look like in my brain.
The Fremen?
Mhm.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's not what they are.
No, it's not at
That's
all
not
what
who
they are,
they
but
is.
that's just where my brain went. I mean, you
Yeah,
probably,
bro. Yeah, I get that.
yeah.
And that's the thing about a book is that you do get a vivid imagery from
Mhm.
the descriptions of the writers in good books. A similar thing happened for me in getting caught into a world, but when I got to when it was made into a movie,
Mhm.
I was disappointed. I think it's called The Princes of Mars. Is it Burroughs? Edgar Rice Burroughs?
I'm not familiar with that.
Where this guy goes into a cave and something happens, but he's transported to Mars.
Mhm.
And he has this the John Carter books. Yeah. And
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
this dude with all the arms. I love that world. So I started reading them. It was a friend's collection in the Navy. And then when I left, I didn't know I couldn't find them anywhere. And I just kind of forgot about it. And then this 21st century comes around, they make a movie. And I'm like, yeah, I gotta watch it. And then I started reading reviews and everybody say it's terrible. So I talked to a buddy. His name is Andy Howell. He's a astronomer in SoCal, Santa Barbara. And he's a movie critic. And he was like, oh, it's good, man. Don't listen to these people. And I fell somewhere in the middle.
All right. Well, I mean, you and I talked before about we've talked before about, like, for example, like, should they make movies based on toys, or is that like kind
Right.
of doing a disservice to kids? Like, for sure, they should absolutely make movies based on books, but I will still
Yeah.
always be the person who is like, read the book first so that you get to
Right.
go on that
Yeah.
imagination trip, because once you've seen
Right.
the movie, it's really hard to not picture like that person. I mean, I even transposed a movie image into my reading of this book that is not from this property. Like, I put the Jawas in this story and
They ruined it.
they're not. So as far as like the role the suits play, yeah, it's definitely more world building than plot driven. That said, I do have a couple of bumps with them.
Ooh,
Yeah,
how
I mean,
dare you?
um, so I have a couple of bumps, which
Yeah.
are that in the books, they explain the lack of computerization. And so that is understood, and just how this technology has been shaped and why. And there's a whole back history for that. They never talk about that. They never talk about that in the movies. There may be a very brief allusion to, there's a particular, in addition to the Bene Gesserit, which is the sisterhood that has a lot of sort of mystical powers, there's also something called a mentat, which is basically what now replaces computers, which are humans who have been trained to calculate incredibly quickly. And then there's the space navigators, but they never talk about that. So for me, like, in some ways, I get thrown by things a little bit because we don't know that. So I kind of look and I go, okay, so wait, they've got the technology to have these massive spaceships to travel the galaxy. They have the technology to make these still suits, they don't have computers. Like something just feels a little off there for me sometimes. So that's number one.
Let me jump in on that one before you go to number two.
Yeah.
Because earlier when I was talking about the suit, and I said something about their durability, and they have to be such that you can do things in them. When I thought about durability, the first thing I thought about is how fragile electronics can be, especially where there's bonds and cables and connectors and things. And I just assumed that it had to have electronic control somehow, some sort of. And now you tell me this from the book.
Well, there may be they have electronics, but they don't have computers. They don't have computing.
Those are two different
machines.
things.
Those are two different things. Those are two different things. Because they have guns, they have like things that they look through. Like I don't know. And if somebody else, if somebody watching does, I don't know the exact dividing line between in this world what is considered an electronic versus what is considered.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about chips. And so based on your description, there are no fabs. They're not building ultra high density integrated circuits. It's not happening.
They're not. They're not. Yeah. And so that gets me to the other big bump that I have, which is, so these suits are really sleek, right? They're sleek, they're movable and all of that. And on one hand, again, like makes sense because they need to be functional. You need to be able to move with them in the desert. If you're wearing something that's like super, you're going to die out there. That said, with all of this processing that they're supposed to do, I kind of go, how is this happening in such a sleek design? And that does throw me a little bit sometimes. Now, I don't think too hard about it because there's so much other stuff that I'm enjoying in the show. So like it doesn't throw me enough to take me out of the world. And maybe in a way, the fact that it's a world building element and not so intrinsic in the plot helps with that because it's not so present all the time that I'm constantly thinking about it. It's like they give you the what if this thing works on this world and you go, does it really work on that world? I'm not sure if it works. Then you're like, okay, fine, it works. I'm like too busy with the political intrigue and looking at Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya and all the amazing people in it. So, because I will, and there's, the production design on this is amazing. Like I just have to mention that like the second one is up for Oscar consideration this year. The first one, which came out in 2021, it was nominated for 10 Oscars and it actually won 5 or 6 of them, including for production design and music and stuff. So the weird thing is I do have some bumps. So if I had to sort of definitively give my answer on does it fly for story, I guess my answer is it flies, but is really uncomfortable.
In our world, it has issues. In their world, it's working. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my answer to does it fly. That said, I have to be really clear, like how much I love these movies and could get lost in this world just forever. And the dynamics, the actors are amazing. It's just beautiful. I just even like small details, like the fact that when they were figuring out the still suits, the costume designers had the location scout come back with rocks from Jordan and I want to say Morocco, which I think Morocco was the other place, wherever it was, and looked at the colors of the rocks and also had him bring back sand from on location so that she could use that to match different colors for the still suits, for the gauze that they wear. Like, there's just so much beautiful craft in this movie.
Yeah, they put a lot of thought into it. It's and you can see it. It's a quality. The visuals are incredibly high quality visuals, which is one of the main reasons I go to a big screen. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so so speaking of put a lot of like thought, let's go from like thought to vibes. Like, does it fly for the vibes? Does it fly for the feels? And what this, like the question this makes me think about a lot is this kind of suit something we should aspire to in real life?
You know what? That's a great question because you can clearly see applications. Even our business, survivalsuits.com, you can imagine many different scenarios where you would want to put a human, but it's just too dangerous, right? And so we think of robots going there. But the idea of squeezing the water out of feces and then drinking it,
Well, I hate to break it to you, dude, but like that is happening all over the world right now.
already. Yeah, I know. I know.
Yeah,
I've watched those videos on water treatment plants and how the whole process works. Yeah. I mean, there are people that survive in deserts. And one of the places that I love in America is the state of Arizona. I traveled there for the first time in 1984. I was in the Mississippi All-State Band. And this was before there were railings around the Grand Canyon and such. And just the natural beauty of Arizona just blew me away. But then I reflected on the fact that there were Native Americans that lived there. And, I had driven, most of the time I've gone, it was in northern Arizona, right? Flagstaff and north. But then I went south in 1988 twice. I went down to Phoenix. One day it was 118 degrees. Another trip, it was 115 degrees, these two separate weekends. And I thought, how did Native Americans live in such an environment without the modern things we have to keep us cool? And, so one of the things I learned, for example, is clay jars. All right. Clay jars allow water to pass through the pores. And when the water gets to the surface, it evaporates. And so that evaporation takes away energy. So you have a clay jar full of cool water in this super hot place, right? So it's a natural. So I'm wondering, humans and animals are so clever when it comes to survival. What technologies did they have in order to survive? Because I just assume that it's nothingness, right? You're just out there hot, shade. That's it, right? Loose fitting clothing like you see in the Eastern deserts, where the Middle Eastern deserts and North Africa, right? They have that type of garb. Native Americans, I don't know what they were wearing in Arizona, but what I know is these places were people lived there, so clearly they were doing something in lands of great heat and little water. So would this help you, for example, to survive on Mercury? Could you go to Mercury and do your thing, right? I'm going to be on, maybe I don't know if Mercury is tidally locked to the sun, but, if it keeps one side facing away, right, like the moon does with Earth, you can live right there on the interface between hot and cold in your little suit and survive like the Fremen do. On Earth, though, the thing that is ruining everything for us is that our robotics is going so fast. Our Skynet is coming along so well, better than we thought, right? We have AI, we have robotics, we have drones. All of that is working so well. So instead of putting humans in survival suits, we're like, let's not send humans at all. Let's send these damn drones, these robots, right?
I'm actually thinking about it like a little closer to home, to be honest. Like for two reasons. One is when I think about the Earth and all the different environments that we have and all the different places that I haven't been yet. I mean, if I could spend a month at the bottom of the sea exploring the seafloor, how freaking cool would that be?
That would be
need a suit to do
amazing.
that. Granted, I hate the cold, but like I would love to be in Antarctica for a chunk of time and understand that environment. So like there are places I would love to go and see and explore on our own planet. And if we could create suits that like allow you to do that, I think, hell yeah,
we've created suits that allow you to barely do that. I have colleagues that do research in Antarctica, and they're, it's miserable.
Right. Like it's miserable. So like if we could create something that is not miserable, that would be
right. Good. As smooth as the Fremen did without electronics, right? I mean, as an aspiration, I would say absolutely if we could do that. Another thing about it I was thinking about is, we have things for just in case, right? So what if you and your family are about to drive from Southern California through Death Valley and this sort of thing? Hey, let's throw some stillsuits in the trunk just in case, right? Car breaks down, we're going to be good. We can walk and survive, right?
I am down for a just in case that you throw on the back.
Yeah. I'll tell you one that should exist, but it doesn't. And I don't know why it doesn't. But one of the things I discovered many years ago is the main cause of death in tornadoes are head injuries.
Because of stuff like knocking you.
Right. Hits you upside the head. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So we need a tornado survival suit?
Yeah, it's called a helmet. Like instead of getting in a tub with a mattress on top of you, how about put on a helmet and get in a tub with a mattress on top of you, right? Nobody puts on a helmet for a tornado. That's not a part
Maybe
of...
you need the helmet that actually then like, you click the mattress on top of the helmet. It's got a little attachment.
And then once that mattress goes airborne, you see a family dangling underneath. Woo!
Yeah, and then you just go off the ride. It becomes an amusement park ride.
The tornado helmet. But yeah, I think as a just in case thing, that's also something, because that is something that happens to people. People do get stuck in deserts and die. People do go on hiking trips and not come back, right? Yeah. One of the videos I watched last week was about all the people who remain on Everest unalive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you know, complete with photos.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, they take the stuff with them, but what we have, like I say, it's stuff that barely keeps you alive. It's not as smooth as what the Fremen do.
No, I am all for things that will keep us more alive, more comfortably.
So, I mean, as far as an aspiration, you know, one thing I love about sci-fi is that it gives us these images of what can be. And then you look decades into the future, and now that is the reality. So something of this nature, and, you know, the fact that there are actual engineers working on metamaterials that can do things like produce power or energy from your motion, you know, elements of it exist and elements of it would exist, but the incorporation into a complete unit that just works so reliably will remain an aspiration for a long time.
Well, I say as an aspiration, it for sure flies, because
absolutely. Our audience, our friend, we release our episodes every Friday, and you can catch us in more than one location. Where can they find us, ma'am?
They can find us at Does It Fly Pod, P-O-D, on TikTok. You can find us at doesitflypod.com. You can find us on YouTube. And of course, if you're listening to the audio instead of watching the video podcast, you can find us at all of the usual channels where you listen to your podcast. So definitely let us know what you think. We had a couple call outs about things we're curious about what you think about this particular series, what you think about the Stillsuits. So leave us a comment or two and let us know, and we will see you next time.